Welcome back to my Animal Education series. Today we're here at the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium, and with Mike. So that was a mouthful, but here we go.
We do have quite a name. We're glad to be here with you today, Cole. And I hear you just got to do our out to sea shark tank dive. What did you think of that?
It was awesome. It was awesome to get down there, put the big old helmet on, get out the GoPro, take tons of footage that is for this video. And what are all of the species that are in the enclosure?
So in that aquarium, we have quite a few different species of fish that you would see in a lot of the temperate oceans of the world, a lot of them up and down the East Coast and the Florida areas. And we have a variety. We have 2 shark species. We have our sandbar sharks and our sand tiger sharks. We also have several large Goliath grouper. We have barracuda, yellowtail snapper, porkfish, a plethora of different species that are filling that exhibit.
And it's awesome to be in that shark diving experience, to see all these fish swim around the cage.
Yeah, it is. It's great to have the chance to see it in that environment, from that perspective, for sure. We do a lot of not only our diving in there for our own maintenance, but with our guests. We also do target training for our sharks in that exhibit. So we have targets attached to poles that we've trained our sharks to approach when they're going to get their feeding. It's one of the ways we make sure that our animals are getting the appropriate amount of food and the desired amount of food. We also give assorted vitamins to our sharks as they come to those targets to feed. So in general with that tank, we mentioned there's so many different species. We do what's called a broadcast feed. So we have a prepared diet. We have the amount of food that we'd like to offer based on the biomass or the average weight of all the animals in that exhibit. And so we do a broadcast feed, which gets to everyone. And then we also use our targets to bring our sharks to one area and our grouper to another area, so that we can give them a very specific and a very tailored diet.
Yeah, I imagine it's pretty difficult to start training them.
It can be, especially with such a large area and so many different fish in there. But it's amazing how quickly they learn and recognize that that target equals a great thing that they want to go to by getting that positive reinforcement with the feed as they come to it. So it's more about consistency and repetition, and the animals are amazing at how quickly they pick up things like that.
So, not being super knowledgeable on all marine life myself, what do grouper eat?
So the grouper out in the wild are going to be eating a wide variety of things. Small fish, small sharks, lobster, a lot of different types of things like that. And you saw how big those Goliath grouper are.
It's a really big fish.
So our Goliath grouper, our largest, are around 400 pounds. But out in the wild, those animals can easily get to be over 600 pounds.
Wow.
And so in general, if it's a smaller fish, then there's a chance they're going to eat it. Big fish eat little fish. And the grouper are certainly a great representation of that. They're fairly indiscriminate, and they'll go after quite a few different species of sea life if it's on their menu.
When I was down in the cage, I had the GoPro out, I was filming one of the sharks, and I see one of the, I think it was the biggest grouper, just come up the side and just swim straight across the big old window. I was like, it's a big fish.
It is. They are a large fish.
So with the shark and the groupers, how do you prevent them from eating the other fish?
That's a great question. So I mentioned earlier we do a broadcast feed, and that lets us know a set amount of food that's going in and that's generally being consumed by all of the different fish in there. Coupled with our target feeding, we're looking to give a percentage of that feed that represents each animal's kind of biomass, like I mentioned before. So sharks may get anywhere from 5 to 10% food by weight every week that's in relation to their average weight. So a 200-pound animal may get 10% of that biomass in food per week. And what we're looking to do is to keep our animals filled up, satisfied, so that they're growing at a healthy rate, but not too quickly. We have to be very mindful not to overfeed our animals. If they get too heavy, they can develop issues just like people can if they're unhealthy or overeat. So it's a bit of a balancing act. You look to see who's eating enough, and feeding enough so that they don't feel the need to go eat their tank mates. That's not to say that occasionally big fish eat small fish, And it's in some ways, I think, a positive sign that animals are comfortable enough to behave naturally in an exhibit environment. So there is occasional predation, but we limit that by making sure we keep our fish fed at an appropriate level.
Because of course animals are unpredictable, so you can't control them to a T. They're going to have that sort of variety.
Yeah, for sure.
And as you mentioned, like wild behaviors are going to pop up if they're comfortable.
That's right.
So it's the exact reason with any other predator. If they're not hungry, there's no reason for them to go hunting.
Right, exactly. And so we keep an eye on our animals' body conditions to make sure that we're keeping them in that nice sweet spot on their growth.
So with all the different species in there, how do you guys figure out which species would work best together?
In general, there's a lot of groundwork has been laid in the past by other places, other institutions, other facilities. Most people at our aquarium, like most aquariums, have a wide background where we've spent time learning and working in other facilities. But in general, we look at animals that share similar areas they might live in. And if they live in a similar area, they're going to have similar requirements for water quality. So temperatures, pHs, oxygen levels, and things like that are all going to be shared if they live in similar environments in the wild. So you've got like our sandbar sharks. They have in part that common name because they like to spend time in inshore sandy areas. And up and down the coast of the US, you'll find them, again, like in temperate waters all over much of the world. And that environment is shared by a lot of those same fish you'll see, the Goliath grouper, the yellowtail snapper. And so they share a common zone, a common region they live in, and therefore have a similar requirements for their water quality parameters. Now, we are mindful, like we mentioned before, about who could eat who or who would or won't eat who, and we make sure we mitigate that by giving an appropriate diet all the time.
Like kind of the above ground or on land example, like bear and deer are found in the same area, but you don't want to put those together because it's a direct predator-prey relationship. Right,
and so it is a little bit different in the aquarium world. You often find common predator and prey living together, and
it's a lot more space.
There's more space, absolutely. They can really move around a lot. We also have a lot of structure. When you're in that exhibit, you probably noticed there were a lot of different coral heads and boulders and things like that. So lots of places for fish to hide, to have their own little niche within each aquarium in each area. So different animals, we use different parts of the exhibit. We talked about the barracuda. It was up in the upper water column, using an entire surface of that tank, cruising around, which they would often do out in the open waterways. And then you've got all those yellowtail snapper that were in there. Beautiful fish with those yellow stripes, and they're going to be schooling above and down amongst the rock work, just as they would out in a wild environment. And so by having the multiple usable areas within a system, you can create little pockets where some animals may do better than others at given times, and really mix different species together.
And this kind of works across the board. Different animals like their own little areas, so they kind of stay there. So if you kind of keep them separated, they're like coexisting, but they're very separate. So what is the size of the tank? This is a pretty big tank.
That tank is approximately 230,000 gallons. So it's almost 20 feet deep. So there's a lot of vertical space and a wide, nice volume, so the animals can really utilize that space fully.
And with the shark diving experience, why is that a good thing for people to interact and be close to sharks and other sea life?
It's a good question. I think that people oftentimes see a shark and just think bad, or have a negative idea going into it. When you're able to get into that environment and share that space with an animal and see it up close, I think you take home a very unique perspective once you get the chance to do that. And I think that's the real message for aquariums and zoos in general, is to create that intimate interaction so that you could leave that dive and be inspired in a different way or in a more profound way by those animals that you saw, and therefore have the interest to go research them and read about them and learn that that sharks are not this dangerous killing machine that a lot of people are afraid they are. I read an article talking about that on average there's about 19 shark attacks in the U.S. every year, and only 1 fatality on average. Versus there's about 37 fatalities from lightning strikes in the U.S. every year.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty, once you start reading about it, once you start researching it, then you start really learning about what are the actual risks and what are the things that we need to worry about to be a positive impact to those sharks and those fish out in the wild.
Once you get in the cage and interacting with these sharks that are swimming around you, you realize it's not like the movie Jaws. They're not out to just kill you. As
right.
good of a movie as that is, it's not exactly accurate.
It is a fantastic movie, but unfortunately it gave a pretty bad black eye to all those sharks out there swimming around in the ocean.
So with the whole shark bite, as most of us animal people have heard about people going and cutting the fins off of sharks. What is that doing to the shark population?
It's severely impacting the shark population. Between illegal harvesting for finning or some of the less responsible fishing that happens on a commercial scale, a lot of sharks are killed in bycatch for some of the long line or net type fishing. So people are absolutely the #1 predator for sharks. We're their biggest. We impact them more than anything else on this planet. And so responsible fisheries can help. Animals like our sand tigers that you saw in our system there, they're listed as vulnerable, but the fishery here in the U.S. in 1997 was completely shut down. So any sand tiger that's caught by mistake as part of bycatch has to be immediately released, and it's been a positive thing for that species, but they'll stay protected due to habitat changes and impact from illegal harvesting in different parts of the world. So they have a rough road.
And it's unfortunate because it's pretty true across the board for sharks. This fishing, finning, as you mentioned, it just sucks,
right?
For lack of a better term.
Yeah, and it's that false image that they're a bad guy, that false that untrue assumption that they're out there just looking to go after people, which is incredibly untrue.
So what other shark species do you have here?
So we have several other species of sharks. You saw our sandbars and our sand tigers. We also have zebra sharks, we have epaulet sharks, we have swell sharks, and they represent a lot of different environments that they'll be found in nature and within our facility. So sharks are amazing because they really inhabit just about every ecosystem in our world's oceans that you can think of. And so it's cool to have different species here that can demonstrate a few of those different regions.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about the sharks and that awesome enclosure that I got to get with.
You're absolutely welcome. It was a pleasure to speak with you about it, Colby.
Same to you. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and also check out my Instagram @Shirk. As always, I'll see you next week.